The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, Weber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, Weber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. Weber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. All right, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Beinhacker. If you are listening on your favorite directory, please leave us a 5-star review. Watching us on YouTube, subscribe, like the channel so we can keep connecting with guys like Brandon, who you're going to meet in a few minutes. So let's get on with today's show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests, where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode. All right, Brandon, thanks for joining me. Thanks for inviting me on your show. We're going to do that later. I don't know if it'll be timed and when they come out, but who knows? And it's a nice morning here in New Jersey. Where are you located, Brandon? I forgot.
I'm in North Carolina. I am from New Jersey.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm familiar with the area, but the taxes, Mitch, I had to get out.
Oh my God. You know how many people I know that left New Jersey, moved to North Carolina?
It's crazy. And I keep apologizing to all our neighbors down here. I'm like, listen, I didn't realize this was the destination for former New Jerseyans.
Yeah.
But we cause traffic down here.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, look, things have just gotten out of control up here. So, and I guess in your business, you can be wherever you want, right? And then
it's a beautiful part of it.
Cool. All right. So let's get into your background first. First half of the show, we'll talk about, because I know you've owned some businesses before. I think you even franchised one. We'll talk about that experience, and so let's go backwards, and then second half of the show, we'll talk about what if and what it's doing and how we can help people. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm up for it.
Good. So let's hear your story.
So I just want to say right off the bat, you mentioned I do have a podcast that you will be a guest on after we record this one. I love that you start your show with a disclaimer. You must be a lawyer because I thought that was so funny. I'm like, boy, do I need to incorporate that on my show?
Yeah,
but you know how the internet is these days.
But you don't have to worry about giving legal advice. You can say whatever you want. In my case, that could be misconstrued. So yeah.
No, that's true. I'll give you legal advice. Please don't take it.
Right. You're not in trouble for doing it. So
exactly. So I started my last business, my first solo venture, about 6 years ago at this point, and it was up in New Jersey, in Central Jersey. It's where I was born and raised, spent my whole life. I was actually part of a family business prior to that, doing similar work. It was in the promotional products industry, so we basically put logos on stuff.
Yeah.
It's a simple way to describe it. It was a fun business. It was a good time, and it was my way of branching out on my own. I loved business. I loved entrepreneurship. I knew that was my kind of my calling and my path, if you will. Ever since honestly like middle school. So I finally got that opportunity about 6 years ago, and went through the process of growing that business. You mentioned, yes, I did turn that into a franchise. I sold that business. And now I'm on to bigger and better things. But you're here to hear that story, I think, and really unpack that. So you tell me, where do you want to go? Because there's a lot of going on there.
First of all, were you one of those kids who were like always doing some sort of little business when you're in middle school and high school? So do you remember some of the things you did? Because I remember I've strung rackets. I made fishing rods. I had a detail company that I sold in high school. What were the things that you did? Do you remember?
Yeah, my first business ever was I was like 9 or 10. I was somewhere in that range, and I would take care of our neighbors' houses and pets when they went on vacation or something. So I'd bring in their mail, I'd water their flowers, I'd walk their dogs, and I printed up little business cards.
Nice.
My parents helped me, get into the world of business, if you will. So I would go door to door and be like, hey, if you need help while you're going on vacation, I'll do all this stuff for you. I made good money. I mean, for a 10-year-old, I thought it was so cool. And that was my first little taste, right? It's like, oh, you can actually you can make money and help other people at the same time. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then that was the pattern throughout my whole childhood and even throughout college. I always had something going on the side where I knew I didn't want to work a job, a traditional job, which I have had several, but I always wanted to try and see what else could I do? What else is out there? How could you be creative and make money at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was the same way. I've had jobs, never was good keeping jobs. And even in law, I worked a couple of firms, but for the most part, it was always, what can I create and how can I do it on my own? My dad was the same way. He was in sales. He was more of an entrepreneur. So the bug kind of bit me too. So, okay. So the franchise business, though, that was a family business that you kind of took over, or you branched it out from the family business?
So I was part of a family business that actually was a franchise. We owned a location, an individual location. That franchise brand kind of got into promotional products, which was was not the introduction to it. I got into selling promotional products and merch in college. That's how I knew I kind of liked this industry. So when that brand got into it, I kind of took that division over, and I said, this is my thing. I like it better than the rest of the business that is part of that brand. It grew to a point where it actually got too big, and that's where we just made it a separate business. So that became my solo owned business.
Got it.
That brand, I grew for I think 3 years before I turned it into a franchise. So it was one of those things where I did a few things really well, and I just doubled down on that. And the reason I got into business was because I saw a hole in the marketplace. There's a billion of these companies out there. It is not a unique thing to be in the promotional products industry.
Yeah, you can get anything online and local, and printing companies do everything. Yeah,
exactly. And you've heard of all of them. I mean, Custom Ink is one of the bigger companies. You've probably seen their commercials on TV. So not real lucrative industry, if you will. But I did notice that there was a problem with the industry as a whole, and that holds true local, national, online, whatever. And that's the customer service was terrible.
Right.
So I said,
basically,
yes. So I said, if I'm going to go into this, I'm going to focus on one thing, and it's the customer service and really the customer experience, which is a different level. At least I classify it as a different level. And that's all I did. And it grew so quickly that I was honestly surprised, and we couldn't even really keep up with it. And I started to see that success, and people start to ask for it, and people would come to us from further and further away. And that's where I kind of knew, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe this has legs and it can be duplicated.
Yeah. Now, what was your parents' business? What was the franchise brand?
The brand is called a Crown Trophy. So it's trophies, awards, stuff like that. But they kind of branched out into the more promotional products industry too.
Got it. Yeah. So if you got trophies for your baseball team or whatever, you guys would engrave them and that type of awards, plaques, things like that.
Exactly.
I think there was a Crown Trophy near us. Are they still around? Are they still a franchise?
Oh yeah, no. So the brand is still alive. My dad still has his location. What city are you in? What town are you in?
I live in Westfield, which is Union County, but I grew up in Essex County. I thought there was one
there's a couple out there.
Fairfield or Clifton or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, off of one of the highways. So what was your brand? What was when you spun it off. For the lack of a better term, you formed this corporate products company, promotional products company. What was that called?
It was called Twisted Inc. was the name of the company.
Twisted Inc. Oh, you're a little bit ahead of your time there.
Why is that?
Well, Custom Inc. came in, right?
Custom Inc., they were around before us. Custom Inc., I think, has been around for maybe 15 or so years.
Oh, that long?
They've blown up in the recent years. But yeah, they were definitely, I didn't steal the name. There's no trademark infringement.
No, I'm sure.
They were, a little before us.
Okay, so let's explore that a little bit, because I think people, listening are like, could I franchise my business, whatever. It's not like you just flip a switch and file a certificate and you're franchised. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that journey. Like, how did you figure it out? Did you have to hire some, big firm out of one of the big cities? How did that go? Because it's more involved than just like licensing your name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very complex. I mean, you know from the legal aspect, it's very heavily involved, and there's a lot of very thick legal documents that you need to have in place. So, as far as forming the brand, step one for me was, I always knew I wanted to. Being part of another franchise, I just love that aspect of the community, the camaraderie of it, the family feel. Mm-hmm. I think I have nothing bad to say about Crown Trophy. I mean, they're a phenomenal brand, and they do it really well. I don't like the product. I mean, I had no passion about building trophies and awards. Right. I really love the merch side of things, though.
Got it.
So that's why I kind of went that way. But that I loved the community feel that they had, and they had their annual meetings every year. It was this big. It felt like a family reunion.
Right, helping business owners and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to create that, and I was like, okay, so I went into this business to Twisted Inc. with that intention of ultimately franchising at some point, not from day one, obviously, because it was not a proven thing. But I said, all right, well, what are some of the things? I had a little bit of experience in the franchise world. What are some of the things that make a brand franchisable, duplicatable? So I started to look at other brands. You look at the big ones, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, these big examples of what a franchise is, what a successful franchise is. Right. And even from my history, and I said, okay, it needs to be duplicatable. It needs to be simple for people. And it needs to, you need to have really anybody have the ability to get in and run it, because it's not, you don't want to buy a job. That's what a lot of franchises end up being.
You buy a coffee franchise and you're going to work there for 24 hours a day making donuts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I didn't want to do that with my own business. So I did not want to set it up in that way. So I knew I needed to design a system. I focused very heavily on the operations. That's why, I introduced myself as a fractional COO. You could see I'm an ops nerd.
Yeah, but operations, look, franchises are like businesses in a box.
Yes.
You don't have business experience. You're not necessarily an MBA. You don't have operational experience. So you have a guide. You follow all the, all your operational manuals that you do. So, I mean, that's one of the advantages of buying a franchise.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing. I created my business to the point where I got out of it. I was not a business operator. I was a business owner, and I wanted to give that gift to other people. So I said, beautiful. Franchising is a fantastic route to do that. It's the ability for someone to invest in something, own an asset that produces income. There's very low risk because it's a proven model, and it has a brand name. At some point, the name is bigger than the actual thing.
Right.
And I said, okay, that's a perfect route for me to go. So that was my focus, really. It was aside from the customer experience, like I said, because that was the differentiator, right? The ability to be duplicated, copied, and plastered anywhere in the country. That was my driving focus in creating systems, creating processes, building the brand up. And that's really where I spent a lot of my time. So the second part of your question is the creation of that brand. So yes, I invested with a franchise development company, and a lot of people go that way. Some people kind of piece it together just with lawyers and all the other stuff you need and consultants. Yeah, I made the mistake of picking the franchise development company that I went with. Not that all of them are bad, but this one was bad. Oh, well, that's a whole different story in itself that I'm happy to dive into here. But
it's a whole industry, unfortunately. I hear those stories a lot.
And it really is. And I've seen the dark side of it, and unfortunately wasted a lot of money in it. But there are some good people, and I've found them, fortunately. But yeah, that's the way I went. I said, I need help making this into a franchise, because I had never done it before. I didn't know, creating a franchise is one thing. Selling it is a different thing.
Sure.
So that's the piece I really wanted help with. And that's the path I decided to pursue. Long story short, no longer doing that.
Right.
But I was able to sell that business. But yeah, that was definitely a rocky road in the middle
Yeah,
there.
no, I'm sure. So what were the things? Because people bring me franchise opportunities all the time for clients to look at. I do a lot of buying and selling and things like that as a lawyer. And I don't do franchise work. I have a very good friend of mine in Florida that does it all over the country, and then I have consultants. And I'm the piecemeal kind of guy, not the full blown company. And but yeah, some of these full blown companies, it shouldn't cost you 150, 200. I've seen $250,000 in work to put this stuff together, especially if you're putting a lot of the time in yourself and you're writing it and so forth. So, but that's maybe another show. But I sometimes I see these things, and look, it's different if you are McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or Popeyes, or I'm not sure if Popeyes is a franchise, but whatever. They have names, right? So the name in and of itself, just because you and I could grill chicken, but the name Chick-fil-A, the lines just start as they're building the building, right? That's not true with smaller franchises. So I find some of these franchises, you look at them and you're like, well, you and I can just start this business down the street. What kind of protection am I getting as a franchisee to buy into this system? Maybe you are getting systems. That's true. You're getting support. Hopefully some of these franchisors are not supportive, but you obviously were. So what was the sales pitch in terms of your offer?
Yeah, we had a unique model. So there are other franchise brands in that industry, and we already mentioned some of the big players like Custom Ink.
Right. I didn't realize they were a franchise, but okay.
They're not, but there are other brands in the industry who are big players. They have multiple hundreds of locations. So
yeah.
And that was one of the things that I considered, because that's immediate competition. They're an established brand. They have a name.
Right.
But the one thing that is required in that industry that most people really it prohibits them from getting into is the physical labor and manufacturing piece. It's a manufacturing business.
Right, obviously.
The only way to do that efficiently is to own that manufacturing and do it in-house in your location. Okay. So that's where we were the differentiators.
We're talking about printing of the logo on the particular item and mug, shirt, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So when I saw all these other brands, the franchise brands in particular, their startup costs, their franchise fees were anywhere from I think 30 to 45, 50,000 or so, which is very normal for franchise fees.
Sounds normal, yeah.
But then what they didn't
does that include, is that just a franchise fee? That doesn't include the build out, or it does include building out your location? No, it doesn't, right?
It doesn't include what you need to get started. And really to run that business profitably, which is what a lot of people didn't want to tell you, is you need a lot of equipment. I mean, you literally need $100,000 to $250,000 of just equipment, plus the building and all the space to put it, because it's big equipment.
Right.
And then OPS, you need a team of like 8 people to run that equipment.
Right.
So you're immediately, if you're not spending that money, you are immediately not going to be profitable for a very long time. Right. So I created this model where I said, okay, I understand you need to produce, and we did that in our location. But we created these micro units. I think we called them express units, where it was really just a satellite storefront. And the investment to get into it was you had your franchise fee, but it would really only cost you like a couple $1,000s for the location, the payroll of the person who would be in the location for the first few months. I think we had our costs down to about 15 to 20,000 was your first 6 months of operation. So even if you made no money outside of the franchise fee, worst case scenarios, you're going to lose like 20 grand.
Make sure I'm understanding. You had like a regional factory. So it was like almost a commissary model, right? You're doing the stuff for them, delivering it to the store. They're paying you a fee. Mm-hmm. So that required an investment on your part, but you're also making money because they're paying you.
Which I already had. We had the equipment. We had all of that.
Because you had done it already.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was scalable. So we figured, we have all this here. Let's help other people make money with way less investment.
Right.
We can even lower the royalties because they're going to have to pay us for the production of the products too. So it was win-win-win. Yeah. And I absolutely loved this model. So that was our differentiator. And immediately it got a ton of traction and interest, which I was obviously excited about, but I knew that it had to be different. It couldn't just be like, copy and paste these other models with 500 locations.
A buddy of mine owns a Minuteman Press, which is a combination between a print shop, and they do a lot of that stuff. I don't think they do that on site though. I think they get it done and it gets shipped to them. I have no idea.
A lot of them do. You'd
Yeah.
be surprised. A lot of those, because the paper is a little bit different than physical goods.
Yeah.
I understand paper's physical. I'm not that stupid.
No,
But
but you mean in
I,
hard
I'm,
goods, right?
yeah, the hard goods.
Yeah.
The merch side of things. So even then, they do a lot of that work in house, and it's time intensive, labor intensive.
Yeah, he's got some big
materials have
equipment.
costs. So
Sure.
there's a lot involved there that people don't understand.
Right. Okay. So how many locations did you have when you got up to, to the point where you sold?
Well, that's the thing. So one, I had my location. I turned the brand into a franchise. I sunk too much money into it. And with this franchise development company, what they started to do was when we were on these sales calls with people, I wasn't on them initially. I wasn't on the first couple of calls to basically.
Part of the deal was they were finding franchisees for you?
Correct.
Okay.
So they had these warm-up calls with people. They got the people interested. So we had both master territories, master franchisees,
Right.
And individual location owners. We had, at the point of right before I shut everything down, 8 signed contracts that were, the value would have been about $500,000 to the brand.
Okay.
And they were signed and ready to go. People were interested. And I got on some of these final meetings with people, kind of like before they sent the check, before they wired the funds and got started. And I started to hear what these people were saying to them. And they were making these promises about, you're going to make $1 million in your first year.
Ugh.
You don't have to do any work. It's going to be easy.
That's
People
totally
just work for
violation
you.
of the FDD. Yeah, you can't make
It
those
is
promises.
completely unethical,
Right.
Against everything that I stand for. And I started to think it was twofold. I was like, first of all, this sounds amazing. I want to buy this franchise.
Right.
Like, what? Can I get some of that too?
Yeah.
A business where you don't have to
That's
work
why
and
you
you make
can't
$1 million.
make those claims, right?
Exactly. So I had the conversation with them, and I was like, you can't promise that. That's, no business does that, first of all.
Right.
You can't make these claims to people. You're about to take, in some cases, their life savings. You have people taking out second mortgages on their house to invest in this stuff. And then I started to realize that it wasn't only my brand, it was all of the brands that they represented. And I started to see those other brands collapsing, where people, they had locations set up. There was one brand in particular, they had sold most of the country, 66 individual territories and 30 some odd master territories, and nobody was profitable, not even the original 2 locations. And I said, hold up, wait a minute. We can't do this. Like, I'm about to ruin 8 people's lives and be responsible for that and have to think about that for the rest of my life.
They could sue you to get the money back if there was any money left.
Yes.
If they misrepresented you, you'd be suing them, and it would be a mess.
It would be a disaster. So I had the conversation. I said, you can't do this. Like, I don't care what you do with the other brands. If you can sleep at night, be my guest, but not with my brand, not with my name that I've built and worked so hard to build. So they said, listen, pal, this is how you sell. This is the world of franchising. You got to get them in the door, and then we'll fix it later. And I said, I'm out. I'm done with this. So I walked away from.
That's good.
I didn't try to get my money back or anything.
Ethical.
And I just said, I am absolutely done with this brand. Close it down, shut it down, take my name off of it, and cancel those contracts. No money was collected, thank God, but
right.
Cancel the contracts and say that this is no longer a franchise brand to invest in.
All right. So lesson learned.
Lesson learned the hard way. But I think, the real lesson learned was what I went into that experience with my eyeballs exploding, looking at dollar signs.
Right.
And that has never, ever led me in a good direction. When I started the brand, it was to make a change in the industry. It was to really improve the customer experience and make it better for the customer. Then I got involved in this world where I met these people. It's, one of those conferences with the marketing bros and all that stuff. It's just all garbage. But they started to run the numbers and like, oh, you could sell this brand for like 9 figures in 5 years. And my eyeballs, right?
Of course. Yeah.
I was like,
you got to do the good up front, and the money follows you. It's not the other way around.
Exactly. So that was my slap on the wrist. That was God saying, don't ever do that again. And there goes all your money and your life savings. So I shut down that brand. I continued to run my location as it was for the next, I think it was about almost 2 full years.
Right. Well, you had all the equipment, right? I mean, you were still operational.
Yeah, we were still operating. We were still making money at that point, but my heart was out of it. And immediately after that, I said, I hate this business. I hate this industry. Yeah. And I started the process to sell that business because I really just didn't want anything to do with
Yeah,
it.
well, it just took everything out of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun anymore.
Right. But it was profitable, the location. So you eventually sold that, not the franchise, but you sold the business.
I sold my original location, my business, middle of last year. I ended up selling that. So I am clean of that business, of that industry, which feels good. But it's one of those things. You learned your lessons. You have stories to tell, and you know what not to do, at least next time.
Right. Yeah, you got to be careful who you're dealing with and how they're operating. It's hard.
Yeah.
So you still, as much as you try, sometimes you still get burned. So the buyer has the rights. They could franchise if they wanted to, or do whatever they want with it, right?
Yeah, they can do whatever they want, and that was part of the deal. We had trademarks, we had the FDD, both of them for both kind of locations. So I said, do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm never going to pursue this industry again. So they can if they want to, but it's just not for me.
Okay, so, and we're going to take a commercial break in a few minutes, but so here you are, right? You had all this great grandiose plans, probably put money into it, the whole thing. You're all ready to go. You had it all planned out. And then you said, here you go. And now what do you do day one of Brandon's new life? Like,
day one actually started about 8 months prior. That's when I met my current business partner.
Okay.
He still lives in New Jersey. He's still up there. Yes. And we became fast friends. I told him, I was like, I got into this and I pursued this franchise route because I wanted to give the gift of business ownership to other people and help people own a business, not operate a business. And that's when we put our heads together. And he's like, I think I have an idea. And he's been consulting with the Fortune 100 for the past 2.5 decades. The biggest companies in the world, if you named them, he's consulted with them.
Okay.
And he has this very unique business architecture or business operating system, business model that he's installed in these brands that really helped him to never go back to them, which is unique in the consulting world. Usually you go in, you fix a problem, you leave, they break it again, they call you back in.
But you want them to do that, right?
I mean, well, some people do, but it's more efficient. It's more beneficial for them, and it's more beneficial for you to have something that they can actually hold on to, keep, grow their business, and make it sustainable. You fix the actual problem. You don't just put Band-Aids on things.
Right.
So he said, I can't stay in this world. I mean, these are the biggest companies in the world. They're all broken. They're inefficient. They're wasting time, money, people.
Sure. Yeah.
And he's like, I love small business owners. I said, me too. Let's put our heads together and start to see where this could go. So while I was in the process of starting to sell my company, we were putting our heads together on how do we bring his process and his product to small business owners. And he was using the company name What If as his consulting firm, but now we've just basically repackaged it, redesigned it, and we exclusively work with small and medium-sized businesses.
Perfect. Okay, so let's take a break. Got a few people that still pay me some money, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about What If and what you're doing, and how we can help people and what they should learn and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to mute you here. Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show. All right, Brandon, we are back and in our mutual studios. And let's talk about what if. So what's your partner's name? Is he Brandon too?
No, his name's Sean Delaney.
Okay, good. So Sean had this, I guess, process, concept, whatever that he was using with large companies. And you were like, how do we help small companies who have no money? Right? So they have no money. That's why you consult with the big companies, because they have money.
Well,
they're a pain in the ass to deal
they
with.
don't all have no money.
That's
Some
true.
of them are just not as efficient as they could be.
Right. You never get paid.
Yeah.
So tell me about what happened. So that was an 8-month process, right? So tell me about what was that process? What did you go through? How did you recognize the shortcomings with small businesses, those types of things?
Well, that was, I mean, we started kind of working together about 8 months before I sold my last business. So you asked, the question was, what did you do on the day one of Brandon 2.0, I guess. My words, not yours.
Yeah, exactly.
I did take a day to digest and just evaluate where I was. But that process of working together started about 8 months prior. And really what we had talked about was, it was a lot of just kicking ideas back and forth and saying, okay, what is broken about small business, about business in general? And these are me asking him those questions, because he's got way more experience than I do. But what it comes down to is all business is broken. The model that we chase in business as a whole, from top to bottom, is broken and inefficient. You have these giant companies, and we think as small business owners, we should be modeling what they do because, well, they're the Fortune 500. They're big, right? They make trillions of dollars in revenue.
But they also waste a lot of money and time and resources.
Exactly.
Yeah. Don't communicate. That's why your buddy Sean was a consultant, because they're so screwed up. They need consultants.
Exactly. They need that outside perspective. So yes, what he realized about that model is that it's, at its core, it's disconnected. And that's why you have things like silos, departments, divisions, whatever you want to call it in corporate America. They don't talk to each other. And you have people working on the same thing in the same building, but they're in different departments, so nobody knows about it.
Right.
And when we bring that down to small business, I'll give you a perfect example. You have a sales team and a marketing team, and they're always in competition with each other.
Right.
Why? They're doing the same
working
thing
together. Right.
It's the same department. It's the same function.
Business development. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's a very, very simple example. But really what we do is we help small business owners see your business is not it's not a Lego set, right? It's not these pieces stuck on each other that you can just add on at will. It's more like the human body. It's all connected somehow. And if you ignore one part of it, it's going to start to affect the other parts of it. It is a living, breathing organism. And the sooner you treat it like that and shift your mindset, well, now you can actually get out of the operator seat and start to see things from a whole big picture and say, oh, if I make a change over here, that actually affects 4 other places. So why don't I leverage the 80-20 rule and do less work and get more out of it? But I know exactly what to focus on to get the most out, instead of really just throwing darts at problems and hoping that is the solution that you need.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. I'm a big advocate of, planning and writing and putting your ideas down and, creating operational guides and making sure that they all work together. I think that's one of the shortcomings I see business owners don't have, is they don't even have a really basic business plan. Like they don't have, like you said, things get siloed just because they're putting fires out all the time. They don't have any strategic approach to running their business, which obviously is what you're, bringing to them. Do you remember, I don't want to talk about any businesses specifically because, it's private and things like that, but what are some of the, I guess, common threads or common things you see that business owners do wrong? One, you said, right, departments or groups tend to not communicate, right, which is very common, right? As they grow, it gets more and more siloed, and you got things that are reproduced, or one's doing something that affects the other one in a negative way. They don't even know why. those types of things. What are the other kind of, threads that you see that are common mistakes or problems or, struggles that small business owners have?
Yeah, it's actually a common theme, and most of us come from some sort of a W-2 background, or
Right.
even if it's 1099, you work in some other structure. So that is your perception of how business is done. When we branch off to become entrepreneurs, not even with the exception of you and me, we started in our early teens selling things and putting things together.
Right.
That's fine. That's more of a freelance gig economy mentality.
Yeah.
But when you model the structure of business, that whatever you were in, you're so focused on the role that you perform, the functions that you do within that role, that you think, okay, business is just a lot of people focused on an individual thing, and I'm really passionate about this service, or I love creating this product. You are the artist, if you will. That's a good way to think about it. You love the creation of the thing.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely. That's usually the case, right?
So those people they step out and they start their business, whether it starts as a side hustle while you keep your job, or you go full bore, you quit your job, you start your business, and you put the sign on the window.
Right.
And what happens is they take the employee mindset into running that business, and they immediately jump to the firefighting and chaos.
Yeah.
So it's not really that they're doing anything wrong. I mean, they're collecting money. You could have a $3 million business where you're still in that employee mindset as the air quotes CEO.
Right. Because then you just happen to own a business that you also have a job with. You're not really an entrepreneur.
Right.
You think you are.
Right. So what ends up happening, and this is the path that I see a lot of times, they build these Frankenstein businesses where everything is disconnected, much like I described before.
Right.
And it takes one of two routes. One is they get by. They're making good money.
Yep.
It's still a Frankenstein monster, but they think it's successful. They call themselves a business owner, and it is what it is.
Right.
And there's no shame against that, because listen, I'm telling you right now, that's most
It's a lifestyle
people.
business, right?
Exactly.
But you know what? Cash flow in those cases, like electricity and Frankenstein, kind of hides a lot of things. Like during pandemic, when your cash flow stopped, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, I'm not making any money." Like
exactly,
they realized it was just churning through the process. But if they would be more strategic about it and take an overall view of things and put the parts together and see how they interact, I think we would avoid a lot of that stuff. But I think one of the problems you mentioned is the creatives like entrepreneurship is attractive to creative people. People want to do they don't want to do the other stuff. They don't want to do the finances and and maybe the marketing they like because it's creative. They don't want to deal with the personnel and the HR and all that stuff. And they avoid it, and they don't empower somebody to handle it properly and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's hard.
And that's the second route, which is you are the creative entrepreneur. You built this thing. Now it's big. It's making millions of dollars. You have dozens of employees, and we just say you're juggling. You're juggling whatever it is, hats, balls, whatever you want to say.
Right.
You are juggling all these different things at any one moment. Pandemic was a perfect example. One of those could drop and everything drops.
Yeah.
But what tends to happen on this path is burnout before anything else. Pandemic was probably a gift for a lot of people to see that without having to go through the burnout.
Right.
But it's either the Frankenstein monster that just kind of sustains and you don't run into problems and it continues to sustain. Fantastic. Still broken. But then you have the burnout side of things where people want to give up. They want to quit. And these are the creative people that started the business. They're not meant to run every single day and juggle all these balls and keep the thing afloat. They're meant to keep creating, and we've stifled that because they've built this thing that stifles their creativity. So in that path, what starts to happen is you drop the marketing ball, the leads start to fall, the cash flow starts to dip, stress starts to induce, and you're not motivated anymore. And it comes from a lack of clear vision of why you even started the thing in the first place and where you're going. But what at the root of both of these paths is you have people that they just, if they set their business up correctly and they acted as a CEO, a true CEO, and not just the guy, the puppet master pulling all the strings behind the scenes, both of these paths are avoidable. And
Right.
the future, you can actually, I'm not going to say you can see the future, but you have a much better path of where your business is going, and you're holding the steering wheel. You can
Sure.
control it. You can move the business if there's a pandemic or if the marketing ball starts to drop. You see those things happening, but we are all in this constant fight or flight mode. We are reacting. And I meet almost no small business owners who their revenue is under 5 million, who are actually proactively designing their business. And I just firmly disagree with that model, because I know you can design your business.
Right. There's no question about it. But you got to be strategic about it. You got to pay attention to it. You got to do it. If you hear any beeps, by the way, in the background, this is what we get with live shows. I got trucks backing up outside the building and things like that. All right. So then let's talk about, because I think we're pretty like-minded. You know, I'm on the legal side. I just finished the audio version of my book called 10 Ways to Get Sued by Anyone and Everyone. We'll talk about it on your show too. But it's all about the legal side of putting things in writing, make sure you have contracts so you avoid disputes and misunderstandings. But, you know, I do talk about business planning and having a strategic approach. So let's talk about the what if approach. Like how do you work with a client? What do you do to diagnose things, to help them fix them? And maybe we can give some tips and tricks, you know, without giving away the farm, that would help the people that are listening.
Well, you know what? We do give away the farm. I fully believe that information is free.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of knowledge out there. If you want it, I'll give it to you. We charge for implementation and handholding and results, which I believe is fully fair. So I'll say this: if you go check us out on YouTube, it's at Ask What If. You'll find the farm, and it's all there. So here's what we do. We you know, when we work with people, step one is we always have to diagnose where you are. So we do have a diagnostic tool that we use. It's 50 questions that Sean has designed and asked, you know, the CEOs of Nike and Uber and Johnson & Johnson. And it's how he can understand where a company is, even of that scale, in 10 minutes by asking these questions. So I'll talk more about that at the end of the episode. You can go take that for free. But we have to diagnose where the company is, right? We have to have that clear picture. And it's not from, you know, the business owner saying, oh, here's our problem. Because what we often find is
they don't know.
They don't know clearly, but they think they do. And the example I love to use is if you go into a doctor and you say, Doc, I need brain surgery tomorrow, and I need you to take out the left side of my brain. Obviously, that's a stupid example, but the doctor would never just cut your head open. No, of course he would not do brain surgery. He'd probably first of all say,
take your word for it.
Yeah, right. I'm a general physician. I'm not licensed. But outside of that, they would check you. They would do a diagnostic and say, okay, what's actually going wrong? And you'd probably come to find out that you have a splinter in your left thumb, and you may have been overreacting a little bit. And that's what we need to do. Because the business owner is not looking at their left thumb. They just know their head hurts for some reason, and they want to take it apart.
And I don't know why.
Exactly. So we have... It's often actually not what you think.
Yeah, it's usually the case. It's like trying to figure out what your customers like. Why do they buy? What do they want from us? 9 times out of 10, you're completely wrong. So you should ask. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's just fundamental business, first of all. But so what we have is I mentioned the proprietary operating model. We call it a business architecture. So it's named Harmonious because we just believe, first of all, music is a great analogy, but doesn't that sound better? Like you want to run a harmonious business.
Isn't that the name of the podcast too? It's Harmonious Lunch or something?
Yes. Yeah. We'll put the link down below. You can come listen to Mitch's episode.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show
released.
Perfect.
But yeah, so you want to run a harmonious business. When things are harmonious, they feel good, they sound good, they're light. What's the opposite of harmonious or harmony? Dissonance.
Right.
And it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't work well. Nobody wants to be there and listen to it. Great analogy in business.
Yeah, very good.
It's an acronym too. So it's the 10 disciplines in business that are fundamental to businesses operating. Again, at all scales. They're present. They're like gravity, whether you want to acknowledge them or not. They're always there.
Right.
And the order we go through them is not the way it's spelled. So that may be a little bit confusing.
So it's not an acronym. Okay.
It's an acronym in terms of they all are the 10 disciplines and they function together. The order we attack them in are a little bit different. So I'm not going to dive into that here because there's just not enough time. Like I said, we have them spelled out on a playlist on our YouTube channel. If you want to go check it out, it is 100% free. But we start with the most important one is navigation, the N. And that for us is the traditional discipline of strategic planning. We've just renamed it to what it really is, which is the navigation of your business. Think about driving a car. You would not get in a car to go somewhere you don't know where you're going without a map. without a GPS,
Right.
without planning your journey.
Right.
But so often business owners do exactly that. And it
Yeah.
starts with your mission, your vision, and your core values at the fundamental core. And we get such a big lift in just the first 3 weeks of working with our clients because we focus on that. We get it perfect. And the clarity that comes over them is shocking to them. It's rewarding for us.
Right.
But it's this breath of fresh air to say, oh, I get it. Like, I know where this business is going. I remember why I started this business.
Right. Well, that's
I know who I serve.
Proprietary business planning is what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. But
So-
nobody really sat them down to do that. And they're just too busy juggling balls and putting fires out.
Right. Because we think business is just the exchange of product, service for value, for money. And we forget that there's so much more behind it. And that's how you scale too. Because you can't onboard effective employees and just say, we just sell things, you turn this switch over here and we make widgets and go do it and be happy and passionate about your job. Like, nobody's going to care.
No.
They're going to collect a paycheck.
Right. And they're going to do poor work and they're not going to really pay attention to things. Sure. No, you want people to buy into your vision and to be excited about it like you're excited about, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I will say this, because you are an attorney, the letter R is for RAD. It stands for it's risk and defense. It's a whole discipline about your protection, the way you look at your contracts, your legal protection, your finances, all that fun stuff.
No, it's good. It's often overlooked till there's a problem. Then you call your attorney and go, I just got this in the mail and I know Brandon and his company are suing us. Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. So things like the disclaimer on this podcast, like I mentioned, like that is very, very important. That
terms and conditions. Yes.
I may need to have on my podcast, but we'll see.
I don't know. We'll see. I may be overkill. The bar in New Jersey doesn't really have any rules, so I kind of created my own because they were like, we don't know, you know.
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. Okay. So, all right. So you do the risk assessment, which is good, right? You always, I think, want to focus on, which I do as a lawyer, right? Also is what I call the governance, housekeeping of your business, which you talk about overlooking finances. Forget about it. I have had people like open in front of me, take the plastic off of their corporate binder that has never been opened, no certificates issued. If they're an LLC, they might not have that, or they're going to sell their business and either they can't find it or they don't have one. And, because they're just not following any of the rules. So I think it's good that you focus on that and get that out of the way. So it's not something that is just hanging out there as a problem you don't know about.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
So where do we go from there? So after risk assessment.
Risk assessment is actually, it's not first. It's one of the disciplines, but it's not if we're working with a client for the first time. So typically when we work with people, they're coming to us because they want more time, they want more money, whatever they say they want. What they really need, what they're after is that freedom of not owning their job, but to have the flexibility and freedom to step away for 3 weeks. Yep. And that's one of the questions we ask too. And I'll ask the listener right now, if you were to step away from your business for 3 weeks,
would it still be there
with zero contact?
Right.
If there's any drop in revenue and profit, you don't own a business, you own a job. Yeah. And it's just the hard reality that we need to get across to people, because that's what we need to build first and foremost, is that flexibility for you to step away, because it's going to happen. You have health, you have life, you have unforeseen circumstances, or you have burnout, like I mentioned. I mean, if you get to that point where you're going to kill your business because you're out of it for 3 days, you're in a very risky situation. And even more than that, you don't have a sellable business. Right. So you can never step away.
If you have to keep working for the company. I would say probably I can name on my hand the ones that I think could just walk away and go away for a month to Greece or whatever. Most of them are, even if they do travel, they're still tied into the business. They have to be, follow up in, plugged in is the word I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
And it's just the reality of the world that they created, really. I mean, it's all, you and I both know this is a choice, right? You can choose to do it. It's funny, you use the word fundamentals. They are fundamentals and nobody uses them. So, you can choose to, with some, not consciousness, self-awareness of working with guys like you, to build it the way you want to build it. I mean, you don't have to build it where it's a firestorm every day, and nobody wants to do that. But they're all, they're all excited. They make a product. They fill a warehouse. We're selling stuff, and we're making a website. We're doing marketing, and they're doing everything, and they never get to the point where they can actually start to transfer it to other people. So,
I think self-awareness, that you use that word, it's a great word, great phrase. But it really comes down to discipline. When you talk about fundamentals, I mean,
Yeah.
one of my favorite examples. I used to be an athlete. Used to play a lot of golf. Tiger Woods was always a great example, and I also happen to love not the sport, but I do love Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
And you look at both of them, Michael Jordan. Name your top athlete. What do they say they do? They work on the fundamentals. Tiger, he putts and chips 4 hours a day, every single
Right.
day,
Of
never
course.
misses it.
Yeah. It
He's
doesn't come
not out
easy to
there.
them. No.
Right. It's no, and they work on it because they
Yeah.
know that's the foundation of their game. He's not sitting out there blasting 350-yard drives.
Right.
That's the sexy marketing courses that you want to buy and whatever. It's what are we going to do today that's the tedious work, but it's going to get the biggest result in the long term. And that's exactly what it is in running our business, but we don't run our businesses with discipline because it's boring.
Boring.
And
Yep.
unfortunately, boring is what makes your business sellable and profitable. And it also lets you go on vacation for 3 weeks in Greece, like Mitch
Right.
said. That sounds amazing. Let's do that.
Yeah. No. You got to put systems in place. You have to have the right people doing it. You have to have them buying in, treating them like they're important, and then they treat your business like it's their own.
Yeah.
Look, I've run into businesses, work with businesses where it's not the owner, but they have someone who may have been with them from the beginning, and he or she is doing so much stuff that I'm not sure they could operate if this person went away. So I think it was one guy, I don't know if he did this, but I said, listen, why don't you take Susie or whatever it was, right? Tell her you're not going to not pay her, but you want to take a month off, no contact to the office, and let's figure out what stuff she handles and see how it goes for the month. And if we can't call her, we got to figure things out on our own. And I think he did do this because the person came back and they ended up being like more of a president. Like he moved her up and they spread things out and it wasn't as stressful to her, and their profitability and their systems really improved. But they were so dependent on this person. If they died in a plane crash, forget about it.
Yeah, that's risky too. I mean, to depend on any one person, that's the whole point. We want to build businesses that don't require input from any one human being, but we design the roles in a way that the business functions absent of who's doing them. So it sounds very cold and boring. Your humans are very important. We have one of the disciplines is humans. So we're not going to ignore that and building the proper culture, but you can't rely on those people and say, oh, see, she's been with me for 2 decades. Like, she gets it. She's part of the team. Susie can also get hit by a bus just like you can. Nice. And we can't have that knowledge die with the individual, whether it's the actual die or if they just leave because they want to leave. They're tired, whatever it is. That's the boring stuff that people don't want to do.
Yeah, it's true. You know how many small nonprofits I've worked with where they have like a secretary or whatever that's been with the organization for 40 years and everything's in her head. Like they don't really have any manuals, because the board changes and directors change, whatever. And you're like, listen, you better get that stuff out of her head and into a book because she's not going to be here much longer, And and sometimes they don't make it. So that's all.
I'm getting itchy just thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, what would you say if people listening, right? If they're looking to start a business or they're struggling with their business, what is the one or two things they should do first to start to? I mean, is it to go to your website and there's a template they can download and start to lay out their business? Is it, go out and find the lean canvas? There's one of those things out there, or go to SCORE? What should they do first to start giving themselves some peace of mind?
Yeah, start a business is a different conversation.
Yeah,
I've started businesses before. There are people that specialize in that. I don't want to give bad advice there. Our principles work whether you're starting a business or running an existing business. My real passion, though, is helping those existing business owners get that freedom back and get on the right path to growing their business and making it a scalable, sellable business. So what I would say is, you asked me before, what are the steps to working together?
Right.
We got through one of them. I told you we're not going to go deep, but what I do have is I have the steps where I have them laid out. So what we did was we put together this 3-part audio series. You're listening to this podcast or watching it. I put it together a private 3-part podcast. There's no cost or anything. And what you're going to do is if you go download it, it's whatif.com/clarity. I'm sure it's in the show notes below.
Yep.
You go download the podcast. You get access to, in episode 1, that diagnostic that I told you about. and then we'll show you how to understand it for your particular business. And then we'll also paint the picture of how to plan out your next 90 days so that you can, with certainty, clarity, and confidence, those are 3 C's that we love giving to people.
Yep.
We want to give you the path to getting 50% of your time back in 90 days. I know that's possible because that's our guarantee with every one of the clients that we work with, or you don't pay us. But we spell that out for you at absolutely no cost. Whatif.com/clarity. 3-part audio series. You give me 35 minutes in your ear holes, just like you are right now.
Great.
And we're going to get you 50% of your time back.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Brandon, we'll also put links to, I guess, your LinkedIn profile, how people can interact with you guys and find you and follow you and all that kind of stuff. I can't thank you enough for coming on my show. I know in a few minutes we're going to be off of here. We'll jump onto your show. Yeah, great advice for business owners, good experiences, great story. And I thank you for coming on the show.
I appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to talking about the 10 ways to get sued by anybody in a couple of minutes with you. So we'll put that link down here as well. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brandon. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.